Welcome back, everybody. This is Rodrigo Fonador with another episode of Asheville Real Estate News. Really excited to talk today about the rental market here and just some general things about real estate in the Asheville area. Joined by two people who run, I think it's the largest, it might not be the largest, but it's a 14,000 plus member group dedicated to just rentals here in Western North Carolina, Asheville predominantly. And so we're going to dive into that and just talk about what sort of conversations we see happen there, their opinions on the rental market, and just rentals in general. As everybody knows, this is kind of a hot topic, and people have millions of opinions on what's happening and what's the right thing for it to be happening. So we're going to dive into that today. Before I introduce our guest, as always, I want to remind everybody that this podcast is brought to you all and sponsored by American IRA, your local IRA custodian. So without further ado, help me welcome Adam and Natalie Malice to the show. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, really excited for you all to be here. Just as a quick reminder, I'm going to let you all know, if you don't mind, just get close to the mic so we can hear you guys well as you discuss, we discuss all the rental things here in the Asheville area. So we talked a little bit about off camera, kind of where you guys are at, but I'd love it if you all each don't mind introducing yourselves, kind of how you got into real estate and how you got into to Asheville as well, unless one of you are locals.
Sure. I'm Adam Malice. I've been in Asheville, well, technically Waynesville, for 12 years now. Mm-hmm. This is my 20th summer in North Carolina. I went to summer camp, which mm-hmm. is how I ended up moving here. After 30 years of hot summers and crowded highways in South Florida, I thought it was time to go. So we came up here in 2007 and sort of went back and forth for about 3 years. And after 3 years, it just became too much. And we found ourselves spending less time in Florida, more time in North Carolina, and left Florida permanently back in 2007.
Yeah, well, welcome. I got here in 2009, so it's a very similar time frame. It's the mountains are sticky, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
way of drawing you in.
That they do. And how about you, Natalie? Obviously 2007, I guess, but
right.
Real estate background. Maybe we can start with you, how you got into it and whatnot.
Well, Adam and I have owned real estate ourselves, so I think it's always a benefit when you take it on as a business to mm-hmm. have some kind of personal experience as far as being a homeowner or selling property.
Right.
I was running my own small business and raising two small children, and Adam took on the real estate business himself first. So he was kind of testing the waters to see what the real estate market in Western North Carolina was like, whether or not this was a good mm-hmm. fit for us as entrepreneurs, and found that it was a very good fit. I personally love real estate, so I was excited to move more from an administrative position with Adam to something more into the sales aspect of it. Mm-hmm.
And how about you, Adam? When did you get the real estate bug per se?
Well, we moved here in 2007. I had my own business, so I brought my own job with me. Okay. Which I found out is probably one of the better decisions to make when you move to Asheville.
Yep.
And so the end of 2010, I ended up selling the business after owning it for almost 10 years, and started having kids. Mm-hmm. After not working for about 3 years, living off the savings from the sale of my business, I figured it was time to get back to work and to find something productive to do.
That's when real estate came into the picture then?
That's when real estate came into the picture. It seemed like a natural fit for me because I came from sales. Mm-hmm. I've owned properties, and we knew the area well, so I figured that those would be advantageous for us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's if you like sales, I think real estate's always a good fit. It seems like that's kind of how I got into it. I was like, before I did real estate, I was like waiting tables. I was a raft guide for a while, and I was like, man, like, do you just tell stories and connect with people? And like right. A lot of good things happen at that point. So that's very similar. Easy transition there. So today we're going to specifically talk about this group you all have that I'm guessing it's probably bigger and it's taken on a little bit of a life of its own that you didn't expect when you started. I would love to hear a little bit about what prompted you guys to start the group and how that's affected anything you all do, if at all.
Sure. It was a couple of things. There were a couple of things going on at the time that I created the group that made me turn it into sort of a social media experiment.
Yeah.
One of them was I was a newish real estate agent, and I was working with probably my first investor client, who decided he wasn't going to flip properties. He was going to buy some rentals.
Okay.
So we started looking at properties and I understood the market, so I understood whether they were good value or priced properly. What I didn't know was what they could rent for, and I wasn't really sure where to start. So I started out with our MLS and quickly learned that Asheville is a unique place that rental real estate isn't really handled by real estate agents. It is in other parts of the country, but here it is not. And I found that out quickly by looking through our MLS and seeing almost 5,000 properties for sale and less than 30 for rent.
Wow. Yeah. It's quite the disparity.
Well, it just showed me that wasn't going to be my source to learn about the rental market. And so the other choices out there were naturally Craigslist and Zillow.
Back when Craigslist was still a thing.
So I started looking into Craigslist and trying to find comps like you do in real estate when you're looking at sales. And I found it very difficult. I started keeping a spreadsheet and trying to determine a price per square foot average. And pricing was all over the place. And it really was dependent on the quality of the property, distance to Asheville, and a number of other factors. So the other issue I ran into on Craigslist was that there were so many scam ads that were fake and they couldn't be included in the pricing. And there were duplicate ads which were, not giving me a lot of samples to work with. So I thought, well, this is going to be hard for me to explain to this investor client how I can determine the best rental values. And I thought, well, what if we pretended that we owned the properties and we just threw them on Craigslist and said, here's our rental rate, and see what kind of responses we get. And I think we did that with a couple, and just to test the waters. And I thought, well, we need something a little bit more. We need more feedback than potentially someone responding, you're too high priced, or not responding at all. And so I came up with a Facebook group.
And what's that Facebook group? The 14,000 plus Facebook group that is great for feedback.
So I came up with the name Asheville Home Rental, home rental market. Yeah. Because, to be quite frank, I wanted to be the entire rental market of Asheville. Right. That was my goal. I wanted to be the source of where people would turn to find rental properties because there wasn't one. Right. It wasn't the MLS and it wasn't Craigslist. The closest thing I found was Zillow, but that was still very limited.
Right. And so that was back in 2015-ish?
Yeah, I think we're in our fourth year.
And how's that been? Did you ever expect it to be what it is today? And did it achieve its purpose, its initial purpose, I guess?
So, the second part of why I built it was I just read an article about a guy who was having a contest with his wife on who could create an Instagram page with more followers. And I thought, all right, this will be interesting to read to see how they gain followers. Right. And to make a long story short, it was really all about offering relevant content to people and and eliminating eyesores and waste and things like that. So when I started this group, one thing I realized, having been in other Facebook groups, was the amount of spam that goes into groups and makes you as a group member not want to be engaging or even be a member, and you end up quitting and the group population goes down. So right away I was taking out any kind of misleading ads or spam or anything like that.
So the purpose of the group was to be an exchange. So the purpose of the group was to have landlords be able to post their ad there, knowing that their ad wouldn't get scammed, like it gets scammed
Right.
on Craigslist, knowing that there's going to be people in this population and this group that are interested in renting in Asheville or Western North Carolina. So the purpose was, okay, let's create a marketplace where the exchange of information is there, where we are the facilitators only of a forum where renters and landlords can come and post.
Right.
And I think it still serves that purpose, to be quite honest. There is a little bit of insanity and, the colorful posts that take place, which I'm sure you're going to touch upon.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't have like any posts in mind or anything. I think the thing that I've been the most, I don't know, amused by or intrigued by is when you're looking at the group is like, this is an opportunity for people to come together, and then there is a lot of just anger around almost any post. It doesn't matter what the post is about, and that's like, oh, that's not realistic. That's the worst idea in the world. You're out of your mind for asking for that.
Don't
and it's
move
like,
here.
Don't move. Like, it's like, whoa. And like this group's supposed to like bring people together to find housing. So yeah, that whole part's just been like, I was like, whoa, okay. Like, we were going to post some of our properties there, and then seeing the group for a little while, I was like, okay, we're not going to post any of our properties here, and we'll just use it for quote unquote market research. How was it at the beginning? I think I've been a member maybe like a year and a half, maybe 2 years. So at the beginning, was it really like a really good exchange?
So when I started it,
Yeah.
I was just getting into this, and I didn't have rental properties of my own to list.
Yeah.
So what I would do is I would go through Craigslist and pull the ads that I was pretty sure were not a scam. I wasn't 100% sure.
Yeah.
But based on how they read, how they were priced, the contact information, those things were red flags for me that in the ads that I posted didn't contain.
Right.
So I started posting those ads. People would respond and say, hey, how can I rent this? And I'd say, contact the original poster through the Craigslist link. So that was sort of the exchange right away. People weren't angry about the rentals and the pricing so much because there were no landlords posting them at the beginning. It was just me, and I was just posting ads that were not my own. So if there were complaints, I would say, well, take it up with the person who made the ad. That's not my price. This is not my rental.
I'm just here to collect
Exactly.
information. Yeah.
As we started to grow and I started to get my own rentals and I started to post rentals and other landlords started to join, I think that's when we started to see more, oh, I can complain to you directly. I'm going to let you know what I think of your pricing and what you're doing to the market here in Asheville.
Right.
And that's sort of where we've derailed.
Yeah. And give or take, do you remember give or take how long ago that was? When you felt like there's a noticeable
It's
shift?
at least 2 years.
Yeah.
But as the admin, I've always taken a back seat
Yeah.
and let people speak their mind. As long as they don't as long as they're not profane,
Yeah.
bullying, threatening, anything like that. Yeah, I understand people are not going to be happy about rental prices, and especially if they're comparing now to their experience from 2, 3, 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Prices have gone up. And so I want, one of the things I want this group to be able to do is let people air their grievances and talk about this.
Yeah.
They can't do it on Craigslist.
Right.
They can see these ads, but they can't interact with each other and say, hey, did you see that house down the street that we knew who used to live there 2 years ago? You see how much it is renting for now?
Right. Yeah, it definitely it allows people to come together under a common thought process or feeling base, I guess, and just be like, hey, yeah, we all disagree with this, or we all agree about it too. I think it's been fun to sometimes see postings where it's like, oh, like this person's getting a lot of support, and like that's good too, just as often as sometimes it's like people aren't enthused about pricing.
But the other thing is, look, there's people moving to Asheville from all over the country.
Yeah.
My phone all day long is inbound calls from every area code in the United States. Right. And a lot of these people have never been to Asheville. I think it's insane to just pack up all your stuff, move to a place you've never been, but people are doing it. We can't stop them.
No.
And they're going to want to know a lot of things about the place they're moving. This is one of their first stops is, all right, let's check out housing. Well, where would we even begin to go?
Yeah.
If you were going to pick up and move today and move to Denver, I mean, how would you even begin to research all of this?
No,
somewhere.
I think that's a great question. And the answer is like I wouldn't know. I'm surprised by the amount of posts in the group that have to do with people that are out of town. It's like I wouldn't have gone to Facebook and been like Denver rentals.
Sure.
Like that's not the first
Right.
way I would have gone to it. But I guess apparently a lot of people do because so many of the posts are, hey, I'm moving to town or I'm coming back and this is what I'm looking for.
Yeah. And I imagine that for some people that this group may have prevented them from moving here. And they may have come to the Asheville idea with rent they can afford in mind, but once they started researching it, realized that it's not in their price range, or it's not in the range that they want to spend and still be able to save money and have money to spend on other things.
Yeah.
Or the converse happens and they're like, what are you even complaining about? I spent $1,600 in San Francisco for a closet. And you're telling me that $1,600 is too much rent for a 3-bedroom house? You guys don't even have any idea what it costs to live any other place in the country. And so I think that it's an interesting discourse. When you're taking a back seat and you're looking and you're reading, it's easy to get heated and to want to throw your opinion into the mix. And at the same time, recognize that there's a big disparity in housing all over this country. And when people are looking for a place to live for quality of life, a change of pace, whatever it is, the thing that has drawn us to the mountains, you to the mountains, people for generations to come here, they're moving and they're saying to themselves, I'm willing to spend quite a bit of money to live this type of lifestyle and live in this place. And it may not be forever, but I need it right now. For now in my life, this is what I need. And so it's an interesting discourse to hear what the market is like in other places. It's also, I think, important for people that are moving here to understand there is a crisis. There are people that cannot afford, whether they're servers, they're in the hospitality industry, they cannot afford to live in central Asheville any longer. The housing, there is a shortage both in sales and in rentals. And if you're coming here and you don't have a plan, may not be a good idea. May not be a good idea for you. You might need to, temper your expectations of what's going to happen when you get here. So, I think for the good and the bad, it's an interesting place to get a 360 view of what's going on in the housing market, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a very unfiltered view, which is good, right?
Yeah.
Nobody's selling you on anything there.
No.
Everybody's just like, hey, these are my opinions. These are my feelings. This is how I view things, and it helps. Where do you guys feel like we are in the rental market? What is happening? If somebody like, wow, I've heard that housing in Asheville is crazy. Can you tell me a little bit about that? What would you say?
Dollar-wise, I think we're probably near the top of the rent that you're going to get here. Because we've already had the popularity boom and those rents have already been raised. And to bring them up higher, I'm not sure what the catalyst would be to have increased rents unless there was all of a sudden a decrease in the supply of housing here.
Right.
But it's going the other way. They're building more housing and they're building more apartment complexes, which for a lot of people is their first step into Asheville. So now you've got landlords that are competing against those properties.
Brand new apartments.
The other thing that happened, say a year and a half ago, is the crackdown on Airbnbs in Asheville. So especially in North Asheville and West Asheville, you had neighborhoods that had a lot of Airbnbs that all of a sudden had to become, 6 or 12-month properties. And so now you had a flood of more properties on the market to stabilize those rents. So my opinion right now is I'm not sure what would cause rents to go up unless just inflation took over nationwide and prices for everything started to skyrocket.
Yeah. Do you have a second opinion or anything?
I would add a little bit to that. I would say that we had a perfect storm that caused a increase and spike in rentals in Asheville. One was there was low inventory. Two was investors 3 years before gobbled up a bunch of properties that were not in great condition, renovated them and made them gorgeous, turned them into Airbnbs, and then found out they couldn't do that anymore.
Right.
Those houses, based on the investment, you are an investor. You understand the number.
Yeah.
You understand what a cap rate is. You know what you need to bring it back in. It's a business for you.
Yeah.
So people that looked at it as a business said, well, I still have to charge $1,800 for this house. There's no way I can't. If not, I'm losing money. So it was a perfect storm. You had all of this influx of these rental properties now, but they were a higher price point in neighborhoods that 5 years ago, West Asheville, are you kidding me? Like, people could totally live in West Asheville without being priced out. Now they can't. And if they are going to find something affordable, it's an old house that's not updated and not in good condition. So you had that perfect storm. That happened. Now you have houses that because those Airbnbs came in, tax values went up on the entire neighborhood. People that are paying a reasonable mortgage now have a higher tax bill that they weren't, didn't have before.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, we had to raise rent in some of our properties.
Right.
So when was that? Was that last year when the
last year was
citywide tax increase went up?
Sure.
Yeah, and it was like, I don't want to, but I'm
I
also
have
not going to like
to.
cash flow negatively on something no matter
Correct. And
what my opinion is on the
No.
price.
You're not a
So,
charity.
Yeah.
You are, and that's a hard pill to swallow for people.
Yeah.
So you have that happen, and then you also have people that, then you do have some people that don't understand the rental market. They're doing it because they're like, hey, it looks like people are getting good rent for their houses. Maybe I'll rent mine, and they don't know what they're pricing their properties at. They don't know whether or not it's a good value for somebody.
Right.
And so that really angers people that are looking at rental properties. They're going, this house is going to fall apart. How can you possibly even consider charging that much for
Right.
this? And so it's this weird, thing that's happening. And then to speak to your point too, with the development that's taking place, the smart thing for developers to do is to build up and to make apartments and to make new nice places where somebody from out of state is going to prefer over the house in West Asheville that hasn't been updated. Sorry, guy, you're not going to get $1,600 for your house because I can get an apartment for that much, and it's nice, and I've got
It's
parking,
got a gym and a
it's got
pool and a dog.
It's got amenity,
park
a
and
dog
all
park,
that,
whatever. They're going to let me bring my pet. They
Yeah.
don't care, and so that's going to shake things up a bit, I think, in the year or two to come.
Yeah,
for
well,
sure.
I think it kind of leads to a question I was wanting to get. It's perfect. Have you noticed or kind of seeing it from this picture where you guys get to sit back and see it all play out? Are there any major differences that you've noticed between people who are like, quote unquote, let's call them professional landlords versus the person kind of who you just described as far as just kind of throwing something up there and seeing what happens?
There's an emotional difference between people that own one property and that's their income, their investment, and others who, own multiple properties and it's just a business transaction for them. That's one thing. There's going to be a difference between in-state and out-of-state landlords. There's going to be a difference between landlords of different ages, we've found. And their ability to keep up with the properties and respond to tenant needs. Because what we do as a rental company is we offer something that is very different than property management. And I think we're unique in that aspect.
We'll talk about that a little bit if you don't mind, or expand on that.
Right. So, as I started this business, I was told by many real estate agents that property management companies just lose money. They're a great place to meet clients, but they all lose money and they're all labor intensive and so forth. So I didn't want to do everything that was involved in property management. I wasn't interested in running people's accounts.
Right.
I didn't have a team of maintenance people that I could call on a minute's notice and come in and do repairs on things, or landscapers or anything like that. But I knew I could advertise and market and deal with clients. So I knew I could get the properties rented, and the heavy lifting is getting the property rented.
Right.
So I figured there must be some money in getting properties rented, and there is a need for it because A, some people don't have the time, B, some people are not in this state, and others just don't want to deal with what's involved in getting a property rented. And so I figured if we can get them rented and get the tenant in for a lot of these landlords that are local, they can handle everything else. They can deal with a maintenance issue. They can deal with a repair issue. They can deal with a lockout. They can deal with an attorney if an eviction needs to be done. There's not a lot a property manager can do if the tenant hasn't paid rent. I mean, they're not going to go over there with a baseball bat and demand money. So they're going to take the same legal path that a property owner that's here in Asheville or in California would do for a property here in Asheville.
So your focus right now is just on pretty much being like, hey, I'll help put somebody in your house. That's a good person, and then you take it from there.
I call it property marketing, and again, the business model here for the property marketing is that we're able to develop relationships with landlords and tenants at the same time, without the hassle and headache of being on call 24 hours a day from landlords and tenants.
Yeah, no, that's a good model.
we've rented over 200 properties since we've started.
That's awesome.
And if I had 200 properties on my books as a property management company, that would mean any one of, I don't know, 300-400 people at any point could give me a call and say, there's a problem, you need to fix it.
Jump through hoops for me.
Exactly.
No doubt. Yeah, it's it can get a little crazy when you get up into those numbers for sure.
So that was half of our company, and the other half we developed. This was something else nobody was doing, and I'm not sure anyone is still doing this, is we were the first company in Asheville to provide tenant services.
What's a tenant service?
So this is very common in other markets. Like if you moved to New York City, you would have to pay a rental agent a finder's fee to find you a place to live because competition is so severe.
Okay.
It's not like that here in Asheville. However, there is a need for assistance in finding a rental property if you're not familiar with the area, if you're working full-time, if you've never been here. There's a number of reasons somebody just doesn't have time to sit down, go through Craigslist, determine which ads are real and which ones are scams, go through Zillow, figure out which ones are not duplicates of the ones they've already. I mean, it is a full-time job to find a property here. Yeah. Because, again, we don't have the MLS. We don't have a good listing service for rentals. There is no good database of Asheville rental properties. Right. The closest thing you have is Zillow. There's, less than 200 properties on there. But we know where the rest are listed. We were able to find them all. We did the legwork. We took all the properties that were listed on every property management company in the Asheville area. We created a database. We had over 400 properties on our database. We made it public to our group members, and at some point we offered this for money because we were paying somebody
to scrub the data.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
Every day.
That makes sense.
Every day. It was several hours a day.
40 plus websites.
If I have to move again, I'd be like, yeah, sign me up for that.
Yeah. And so we were asking for $20.
Oh, wow.
And people were saying it was too much.
No.
Really?
Yeah, and then we did a survey on the Facebook group saying, how much would you pay for this information? Would you even donate money to it? Because we just want to keep it going.
Right.
We're losing money at this point, helping y'all figure out where it is that you, I mean, and they could filter the information. I'm looking for a 1-bedroom. I need pets. I don't, whatever. I mean, it was awesome. Yeah. And people did not want to pay for the service, even for the short period of time that they would be looking, 60 to 90 days. It was shocking to me that people didn't want. For how many people are so frustrated that they can't find a rental, I'm shocked that somebody wouldn't want that service. So that was interesting.
I'm completely stunned by that. That's
might have to
very
try
surprising. Yeah, I will try it again.
That started as a result of the tenant services, which was basically someone would come to me and say, we're trying to find a rental. It's me and my 2 kids. We've got a 30-pound dog. I work at Mission Hospital. My kids go to these schools, so we need to be within 20 minutes of the, of those places.
They give you their criteria.
And here's my rent. Here's what I can spend. What can you find for me? So I would go through 40 websites plus Craigslist and Zillow, again, determining which ones are scams, not scams. Yeah. Contact the property owners to make sure they're still available. Explain the situation of the tenant I'm working for, see if they're a suitable candidate, and then set up a showing for them. And that took a lot of time. Yeah. And we were able to put multiple people into properties from out of state that would not have been able to do this on their own.
And at probably a pretty good price, I'm assuming, as far as what they were paying versus what they would have paid if they weren't searching and they were just like, I just need somewhere, I'm going to pick this.
Sure. So I know in New York City they were charging 1 month's rent.
Mm-hmm.
And in New York, a month's rent is a couple of $1,000s.
Right.
We started this service at, I think, $200 or $250. And it got very popular very quickly, so that I had to raise the price just to kind of turn people away.
Yeah. So do you still do that?
We still do it. We charge $500 right now.
Yeah.
So if anyone's listening and they need
Yeah, no, by all means, please, though, because I think, like, I had no idea that service existed.
Sure.
I've moved a bunch around here, and those were one of those things where I've been like, yeah, I don't want to deal with that. Like, that's worth, not having to think about it. You're probably going to get a much better price option versus if you're doing it on yourself, because you don't have, I didn't even know there's 40 websites, like.
Sure. But I thought I framed it well by just trying to remind people that if you spend $1,000 a month on rent this year, when you spend $12,000,
Yeah.
if you look back and you say, oh man, I spent $12,500, but I got into a place quickly and without
That
hassle.
you like, yeah.
Don't you think it was worth it?
For sure, absolutely. No, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to discuss is pets. It's very hot button
Hot
issue.
topic.
Yeah. So what do we do about pets and rentals? How do we approach this? Is there a solution? It's just kind of everybody fend for themselves.
All right.
Rodrigo, what do you do about pets and rentals?
We're pretty okay with it. I think we charge a non-refundable pet fee.
Okay.
Yes, we do a non-refundable pet fee and hope for the best.
Yeah.
And I don't know what else to do.
Sure.
That being said, a lot of the stuff the rentals that we have, I mean, we're not talking about like super nice houses. I think our medium price point for our properties is somewhere in that $900-ish range, maybe a little
That's
bit,
good.
so like $800 to $900.
Yeah.
And again, our houses are not going to be the prettiest, most beautifulest houses. Like, sometimes the paint in a room might not be the exact shade.
Sure.
But everything's going to work, and we're going to come out if there's an issue. Some of the aesthetics things might not be up to par. But then again, we do let pets. We handle things as they come up, and we're charging, as low as we can and as high as we can at the same time and try to strike that balance. So
That's good.
So pets, yeah. I mean, it's a hot topic. The reality is that landlords don't want them, and tenants do. I am a pet owner. I have 2 cats. I would not want to put my cats in anyone's house. They throw up hairballs. They scratch my furniture. They scratch doorposts and things like that. So I understand the landlord's resistance to having pets. But as a pet owner, I understand my need to have a property that allows pets.
right.
I think people need to be realistic, and especially with the number of pets that they have in terms of trying to find a rental property. I think 2 is pretty common for landlords to be open to.
Yeah.
After that, less likely. When you get more than 4, I mean, you're just
Pushing the limit.
You should probably buy a house, or if you have 4 dogs, you should probably buy a house.
Yeah, I always struggle with this. It's like, especially if you've been renting for a while and then you choose to get a pet or multiple pets, I feel like it's a little hard for you to complain about how hard it is to live somewhere with pets. Like that this is the case. This is not new information. Like, why are you surprised?
Yeah.
I mean, by all means, have your pet and live wherever you want and find somebody who's willing to take him. Like, I mean, we do, but I don't
be
think
surprised when.
I don't think you should be in a position where you feel like you can criticize a landlord for not wanting to for not accepting pets. Like,
I'm going
that's
to give
their
you
choice.
an anecdote. I'm going to give you
Yes,
just
anecdote.
a little, because we
Please.
do, this is what we and oftentimes there are landlords that it's a circumstantial thing. They own multiple properties. They need to rent one for a little while before they get ready to sell it because,
XYZ,
we're
yeah.
just whatever, right? So I was in a particular scenario just like that. Found a tenant for this landlord. They had 2 dogs, seemed to love and care for their dogs.
Yeah.
She was perfectly fine. They were small dogs, perfectly fine for the short term that they were going to be living in the property for them to bring the dogs. The place was carpeted. I've not run into this personally because we're not property managers. So I haven't personally run into this problem. But now I understand the problem with dogs and carpet or pets and carpet. They had fleas. These people moved out. I went to go start showing the property again. I walk into the property and just literally fleas jumped on me.
Yeah.
I've never seen anything like this before in my life. I was like, oh my God. And the people that of course these people don't run a rent.
Yeah.
This is gorgeous townhouse now because they're covered in fleas. It was awful. It took us, very long story short, 60 days to eradicate this problem. And to this point, to this day, we don't know if they're completely gone. We know that renting it to somebody that doesn't have a pet right now is the only recourse without having to rip out that carpet. This landlord, thankfully, had taken a $300 non-refundable pet fee that paid for the extermination process of the pet. Had she not charged that, she would have been out of pocket for that, right? So it makes sense. I mean, you come to realize it's unforeseen. Those people took care of their dogs. Maybe they missed one flea treatment and it was summertime, and then the fleas a flea got on them, and then the flea ended up in the carpet, and then the whole place got, so it's crazy how something like that can occur. And we've had other landlords, I've had another landlord tell me she had to literally cut drywall out of a part of a home that she rented because the cat sprayed. They couldn't figure out what it was. They were like cleaning, doing everything online, figuring out how do we get rid of the cat smell. The cat had urinated or sprayed on the drywall. I mean, these things happen. Landlords are typically pet owners as well. So they're not anti-pet. They just recognize this could cost me a fortune eventually,
And some of the damage is beyond what the deposit is.
Exactly.
Well, I feel like if you're in a position where you're talking about not giving somebody back their deposit, typically the deposit's not going to cover it anyways. Like it's you either have a normal wear and tear, or you've got a full blown this is going to be an issue. Yeah.
I've got to replace every door frame.
My advice to tenants is, at any point during your tenancy, when you think things are going well with your landlord, ask that landlord for a reference letter that says your pet is a good pet, hasn't done any damage to the property, even if it's in the middle of your tenancy.
Right.
Because when you move out, you may want that letter. Something might have happened to the landlord. Maybe your relationship changed. Who knows?
Yeah.
Get the letter, because that's what you want to offer to the next landlord.
That's a really
I
good
don't want to take your word for it that your dog's crated, that she's the sweetest pet in the world.
Nobody comes out and says, I have a terrible pet.
Right.
Like, everybody's always optimistic and loves their dog or cat or whatever their pet is.
Yeah. And then the other thing is, take a nice photo of your pet to melt the hearts of the landlord. But take a good photo. I got a photo the other day from a prospective tenant, and he, it looked like it was taken from 30 feet away, and he said, this is the best picture I had of my dog. I'm like, well, if you still have the dog and you still have your camera, how can you take another picture?
Take another picture,
So he didn't do that. That didn't work out well for him, and he ended up not getting the property.
And I'll say this too, I love what you just said about getting a reference, because this is one of the things that I've had to work through with, like, in particular, the one landlord with the drywall situation. She since has come around. I said, if we have a great tenant, this person is wonderful, you like them, they're nice, you meet the pet, they're wonderful. If they have a landlord reference for that animal, not a personal reference, a landlord reference, that animal did not do damage to my property, it's been really nice, no neighbors have complained about barking, that kind of stuff. I think that should suffice for you to be comfortable to rent and move forward with that person, and you're showing good faith and saying, I believe I want to rent to you and I want to allow for your animal to come with you.
Right.
And just show me in good faith that you're treating your pet for fleas are a problem. Ticks are a problem here. This is not we can't pretend we don't live in the country. I mean, we do.
Yeah.
And they are all around us, and they're everywhere. And they will come into a home, and they will end up, if you're in an apartment building, if you're in a townhome, that will end up spreading to other people's properties too. And so it's really, everybody just needs to take the emotion out of it, which is hard to do with your pets, and just say, okay, Adam just gave great advice. I'm going to get a landlord reference so that I'm ready for the next time that I move to somewhere. I'm going to have something in my back pocket for that. And I agree with the pictures. I got one girl with 2 cats able to get into a place that wouldn't have accepted cats because she had the cutest pictures of her cats ever, and it worked. It totally worked. It was like, and they're happy, and everybody's happy.
My advice for landlords is if your property is not renting, you might have to consider accepting pets when you previously didn't.
Yeah.
We're always pushing landlords as people who help assist with rental properties. We're always pushing landlords to accept pets.
Yeah. Take a non-refundable pet deposit and accept the pets. Yeah. And because you could be turning away great people, and they're a family that moved from a different part of the country who used to be homeowners, and they had a dog and 2 cats. That doesn't make them bad people, or or these animals are going to be terrors. Except you could get really great.
There's always a price point where you can get comfortable with almost anything if you're renting it out. And I think if you're a landlord and you don't want to do pets, then just say, okay, well, at what point, what's the cost? And then you just say, okay, fine, I'll do pets, but I want $1,000 non-refundable. You might not get it, but then if you do, you'll at least in theory sleep easy. So
because you're going to have gone 1 or 2 months without your monthly rent, having turned away people that had pets. So where is the breaking point for you in your math?
For sure. And it goes the other way, right? As a tenant, you might not want to be paying X amount of rent, but if that's the only place that allows a pet and you can get comfortable with everything else, and it's one of those things where it's like, hey, that's a variable you have to deal with. You signed up for having a pet. You're going to have to sign up with the cost of owning one, and, and that's just part of it.
Sure.
And
another theme I've seen repeat over and over in our Facebook group is that, hey, I moved to Asheville. Heard it was the pet-friendly town. It's not. None of the landlords take pets. Right. Well, part of that is also landlords having insurance policies that have breed restrictions that would not allow them to insure their property. Not to say that everyone has a restricted breed pet, but some landlords just don't want to take any chances. Yeah. And they'll cut it out right away.
Yeah, and they're allowed to do that.
They're allowed to do that.
For sure. So, as we're wrapping up here, I think it'd be really helpful or just super powerful to, just talk a little bit about, let's focus on tenants first and then maybe on landlords afterwards. If you're a tenant, you're here in Asheville today, August 2019, and you're going to go out rent something, how do you set yourself up for success? What would you be doing?
Okay, so is the guy
besides calling you and being like, hey, sign me up for your service?
Well, is the guy on the other end of the phone, the other end of the email from rental ads, I see what comes in and what's effective.
Right.
For me, phone calls are the most effective, not an email. And it's not because I don't want to spend time responding. It's a lot of the time I can't keep up. Mm-hmm. The emails come in, they pile up, and before I know it, your email that came in yesterday is number 51, so it's on page 2 of my Gmail account, and I don't even see it. So if you call me and bother me, you're going to get my attention. The squeaky wheel will get the grease with rentals. I think that's important. So I think you need to be persistent. You need to hit from multiple angles. You need to send an email, a text, and maybe a phone call. Hey, remember me? I'm the guy that emailed you this morning. I'm the guy that shot you a text earlier today. Mm-hmm. So you're kind of already starting off. When I list a property and I know it's going to get a lot of responses, there's always one person that ends up getting my attention for the first showing or for whatever. Because the way I usually handle it is I'll put a property up and then the responses start coming in, emails, phone calls, and texts. People want to see the property. Well, I'm not going to show it today. Let's figure out when everyone can sort of see it around the same time. Right. That way I'm not running back and forth 10 times. If there's a tenant there, we're not bothering them too much. And there's always one person that says, hey, I can be here at 11. And I'm always like, all right, well, we'll start with you. Mm-hmm. And for me, a lot of the time is that's the person that hit me from multiple angles, whether it was the phone call and they left me a voicemail. The ones that just say, hey, I'm interested, they don't get my attention much.
What do you do with that?
Well, I give everyone the same response. When people send me an inquiry, when they send me an inquiry on a rental property, I give everyone the same response. It just says either like, when do you want to see the property, or when are you thinking of moving, and how many people are moving? And if they don't respond to that reply, there's zero chance that they're going to see this property. And they may not want to, so that's fine. I might be property number 50 that they're trying to find for the day, so that's okay with me. But you need to be persistent. You need to get from multiple angles. And personally, I don't like a very long story. I don't want to sit there and read your whole story about why you decided to move to Asheville and everything about your life. I want to know how many people are going to move in, when you're going to move in. I want to know some things that in the event that you do like the property, you're qualified to be a tenant. And that's what I try to do right away. So I think if you're a tenant and you can get those things across, hey, I'm a qualified tenant. We've got great credit. We've got rental history. We've got verifiable income. We don't have any pets. And these are our jobs. Then you've just filled out all the information I want to see before I go, well, come on down, let's take a look at it.
And I would say setting yourself up for success is the key component. We also, Adam was approached by ABCCM, is that what it is? To help veterans who are getting back into, so they've been homeless and now they're getting back into society. Okay. We do a Rent 101 class. There's several of us at Keller Williams that do it. We kind of swap and rotate once a month. We teach this to these people as well. So I'm not saying this to be like to say nobody can do this. No. This is, if you're going to buy a home, you have to meet a debt income ratio. Yeah. If you're going to rent a property, a landlord is doing the responsible thing by asking you if you can afford to rent that property.
Nobody wants to be set up for failure.
Nobody wants to set you up to literally be living paycheck to paycheck and not be able to pay your utilities or pay gas or go out to eat. Okay, so 3 times the verifiable income of gross income between all combined parties who are renting the property is what is expected. It's what's standard. It's what you should only be looking within. And if you can't afford that, my next thing to set you up for success is to say, look a little bit outside of the general area that you're looking in. You may think it's more affordable for you, quote unquote. I'm doing air quotes, and I'm on the radio, or podcast. I'm so old. I said radio, but anyway, you may think it's better for you to live centrally so that you can get around to everywhere. I have news for you. Being a realtor, it takes 20 minutes to get anywhere in Asheville anyway. So if you're living a little bit further west to come into town for work, I drive 35 minutes every day to come to Asheville. I love where I live. It's way less expensive. The property taxes are less. Everything is less, so the landlord's going to charge you less. Right. And the property may be bigger and nicer and newer and all this stuff. So be open-minded in thinking about where it is that you're looking so that you can meet that criteria, because that's the most important criteria. Don't be surprised when somebody asks you about your credit and criminal background. Be upfront. Set yourself up for success. Be upfront about things that you do have in your history, because a lot of it is circumstantial and people will look past that.
Well, not only that, you can save on application fees by saying, hey, by the way, when you run my credit, you're going to see that I had this charge on there. Is that going to be a problem with my application?
That's right.
And they'll give the landlord a chance to say, yes, I'm not interested in that type of tenant. Fair enough, that's their property. But at least I'm not spending money to apply for an immediate rejection.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. Just over-communicate. It's going to be a much better experience for both parties, especially if you're looking, because then right off the bat, and it's also going to build trust with your landlord if you just tell them right up front, hey, like, these are the things that you're going to see, and these are issues. If you want to hear the story or the context of it, let me know.
If I were a tenant, I'd also ask these 2 things. I would say, if you're in this situation, are you okay with a roommate situation? They can't deny a family because of familial status, but they can deny roommates. Is it okay? We're 3 unrelated adults. Is that going to be before I drive to your property to look at it today? We're 3 unrelated adults. Is that okay? So if so, move forward.
Yeah, that's a great question.
The other one is, do you have any applications pending? And if so, when do you expect to make a decision by? And if they say, well, we're collecting them, then you probably don't want to be part of their collection. So I would move on to another property. If they say we don't have any applications in at the moment, and we only process 1 at a time, that's a property that I'd be interested in seeing.
Yeah, no doubt. Any tips for landlords
Trying this by yourself can be painful, which is why we've been successful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you have to know your market. You have to understand what to expect from tenants, and you have to realize that the best tenants on paper don't necessarily make the best tenants, and the worst tenants on paper don't make the worst ones.
I agree wholeheartedly. I think some of the best experiences with tenants would have been with people who were super upfront about how terrible they appeared on paper. They're like, take a chance, you take a chance, and they're like awesome tenants.
Right.
It's like, oh wow, my house is better now that you have left.
Sure.
Right.
And versus the other can happen as well. So, well, any parting thoughts from either of you, Adam or Natalie? Like,
No.
all right, what's the Facebook group name again, just to make sure?
Asheville Home Rental Market, approaching 15,000 members.
Yep.
We're the largest social media real estate group in the Western North Carolina area.
Yep. Great group. If you're curious about rentals here in the Asheville area, highly recommend it. If
Thank
nothing
you.
else, just for getting context of what's happening and get an idea of what people think is important. So, all right, you all, thanks so much for tuning into this episode. And thank you all for joining
Thanks,
us.
Rodrigo.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And see you guys all next week. Take care.
Bye.